I'd like to formally welcome you to the Southwest Transportation Workforce Center Steering Committee kickoff and network launch. As you all know from our tagline and from the invitation to take part, the center seeks to connect and empower the 21st century transportation workforce through a combination of research, education, and industry engagement. The purpose of today's meeting and launch is to review the purpose of the center so everyone's clear, and some of the key deliverables, to talk about the structure of our team, introduce you to some of those team members, introduce you to the engagement tools that we would like to get your feedback on, and also hear generally from you as steering committee members and thought leaders about the role of the steering committee and how you can help us and how hopefully the center can benefit your already extensive efforts as well. As you know, the Federal Highway Administration funded the launch of the Southwest Transportation Workforce Center in concert with 4 other regional centers that form what is now being called the National Network for the Transportation Workforce. Each center is dedicated to providing a more strategic and efficient approach to transportation workforce development, and today, as I said, we're launching our network. Our purpose is to build partnerships and alliances between strategic stakeholders and all of those people who are engaged in workforce development to advance an abiding goal. Develop a skilled and a career-ready transportation workforce throughout our 8 member states, which are, as you can see, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Texas, and Oklahoma. And with the active participation from all of these regional centers, the national network, we hope, is going to do a number of different things, and this is our mandate: to develop better data on transportation job needs, priorities within each of the regions. So that is developing a transportation workforce profile at a regional level to complement what we already know sort of at a more national level or a state level. To create one-stop portals for transportation training and education programs in the regions for all levels, from middle school through professional development. Our job is to create a clearinghouse of information that's beneficial to people across industry segments, modal segments, educational sectors, labor management, whatever it might be. To better align education and training to address workforce skill gaps that's responsive to the data that we're generating, and to facilitate connections between industry, education, economic development, and workforce communities, all which we hope will help create a more sustainable pool of skilled and diverse workers. Each of the centers has been asked to develop an area of focus given the scope of the transportation workforce need. In the Southwest, we're looking at, in particular, workforce issues tied to borders and corridors, intelligent transportation systems. Borders and corridors will allow us to address maritime ports, airports, border crossings, and each of the centers has also been asked to address a barrier to entry to the workforce, and given some of the unique challenges of our 8 state members, we're going to be looking at language acquisition. We've already had a number of successes in terms of making connections and developing outreach efforts. We've worked with AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, as part of a Colorado Department of Transportation peer exchange. We have looked at the unique needs of the future transportation professional via roundtable academic industry dialogue that occurred here in Southern California. And as we speak, we're undergoing, or we are in the middle of an academy externship in partnership with the Port of Long Beach and Long Beach Unified School District that's partnering high school teachers who are addressing Common Core challenges with industry partners from the field of transportation and logistics. We want to sort of introduce our team now, and then we'll move on to the real sort of core of the activities today, which is introducing the communications tools that we're using, and then giving you an opportunity for some feedback. So here is our SWTWC team. As you know, I'm Tom O'Brien. I'm the center's director. I also serve as the CITT executive director. CITT is the Center for International Trade and Transportation at California State University, Long Beach. This is the home of the Southwest Transportation Workforce Center. I'm also the associate director of the MetTrans Transportation Center, which is a federally designated university transportation center that is a partnership of Cal State Long Beach and the University of Southern California.
Hi, my name is Tyler Reeb. I'm the Associate Director of SWTWC. I'd like to just mention that, of course, in addition to building an online network, we're also building a person-to-person network, and our relationships are critical. So I would like to just extend an open line via email and phone. If any of you have any ideas for our research agenda or anything transportation workforce related, feel free to give me a call, and I'm all ears.
Yeah, this is Tom again. As you found from the communications, Tyler, as associate director, is actually the principal point of contact for all of you and for the other stakeholders. We have members from the University of Southern California through the MetTrans Transportation Center, as I mentioned. Dr. Jen Giuliano, who cannot be on the call, she's actually in China, is with the USC Salt Price School of Public Policy, and you see she has a host of other responsibilities there. She's a world-renowned expert in transportation and will be contributing principally to the labor market analysis piece of the work that we're doing, but she also provides high-level guidance. Susan, are you on the line? Not sure if Susan is. Susan Gouch is also with the USC Salt Price School of Public Policy. She's the director of online learning. She is a senior advisor who is providing guidance to us on using technology to reach a widely dispersed and diverse set of stakeholders. Fran Bowman, who is with the National Occupational Competency Testing Institute, is more than a K-12 education consultant. She's an expert in career and technical education, formerly serving as the director of CTE for the state of Illinois. And the reason she's not on the call is she actually is running that externship academy that I mentioned earlier with the port. So she's next door helping train teachers. And she's coordinating the outreach through with a particular focus on grades 6 through 12. Mark Kopic, I know, is on the line. I'll ask him to introduce himself and the role he's playing with the team.
Yes, hi. Mark Kopic here from Texas A&M Transportation Institute. I'm the web manager here at TTI. We build websites, various kinds of online tools for our institute and its sponsors for 20 years now. And I have two other members of my team here as well, Hong Yu and Stephanie Leary. We are partly chosen for this project because of the work on the National Work Zone Safety Information Clearinghouse website that we have, and I say we, it's mostly Hong, has administered here for well over 10 years, maybe 15 years. Our role on the current project will be taking what we have been working on in this area to set up the website that we'll be using for our project, bringing in data from outside sources, making data that we bring in available to sources outside us, and working on launching this website in October is our target date.
Thanks, Mark. One of the reasons we brought the TTI team on, as Mark said, is they have experience in developing more than just a website. We're talking about a clearinghouse of information. Yes. That it will allow us to capture and present the data that is being generated, not only with regard to the labor market analysis, but also the critical resource compendium that will include the best practices, the stakeholder lists, all of those things that we hope will be valuable resources for those of you on the phone and also others who would benefit from having good information about workforce development.
And we'd be glad to go into more detail on both our qualifications and plans as members of the steering committee ask for that information.
Thanks, Mark. That's a good point. I'd like to introduce at this time Dr. Brian Cronin with ICF International.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. My background is in industrial psychology. We are going to be leading the way on the workforce profile and workforce analysis. So I look forward to working with many of you on the phone to get your insights on critical occupations and programs that might be used to address skill needs. So more to come on that, but it's good to be here. Thanks, Tom, for letting me say a word or two.
Thanks, Brian. Brian has already started, and Brian and his team have already started going through some of the data. One of the, as I said, one of the challenges is trying to cut the data a little differently. Look at not just the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS data, but other new tools that might be at our disposal to capture a more dynamic transportation workforce. And Brian would be available to answer any questions, I think, about some of the preliminary findings and what they're uncovering.
Absolutely.
We also have two tremendous research assistants who are, as I mentioned earlier, manning our chat box if you have any feedback. Both are involved in different educational roles as graduate students, and they've both been invaluable team members moving forward. We have Daniel Magnow here and Jennifer Tran, and if time allows, during our Q&A session, we'd like to get their input on the value of our communications platform.
And then this is the very distinguished list of steering committee members that up till now we've brought on board. We still have a few other invitations out. Our attempt was to get a cross-section of high-level thought leaders who can in part help us direct the efforts of the center, who can connect us to people in worlds that might normally be viewed as being modal-centric or modal-specific or specific to an area of the educational spectrum or have a geographic concentration. And by bringing you on board, help us better understand what's happening on the ground in your spheres of influence, and then through the Workforce Center and the network, help us connect the people of your different worlds. As the invitation letter said, we hope to be using you in a way that does not add a burden to what you're already doing. We hope to provide value added through the information that we are collecting, and hopefully in having you look at maybe some of the data that's generated, the resources that are generated, getting good feedback on what's most valuable to you in the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. You really are a tremendous set of people who have already demonstrated your commitment to workforce development and transportation in a number of ways, and that's why we've asked you to be on board, and we're thrilled that you've accepted the invitation. Now we want to talk a little bit about how we hope the steering committee members will be engaged in the Workforce Center and our network moving forward.
So, as Tom said, we want to discuss engagement, and this, to boil it down to one operative word, begins and ends with the dialogue. We'll begin this dialogue with a sign-up survey where you will, as Tom has done already, indicate the national events that you will be attending, your priorities in addressing the transportation workforce, and the best practices that you find most valuable. In doing so, from the outset and then in follow-up surveys in response to targeted data that we send you, you will give us responses that, although in some cases they might seem simple and prosaic, will be incredibly powerful for us in optimizing our network and then in turn getting you information that's more targeted and more suited to your needs. So this brings us to our constituent relationship management software, which has tags that enables us to take an inventory of your responses and build member profiles that will give us the power to organize our network in an infinite number of ways. So here we have a snapshot of Tom's profile. As we get more engaged and proceed through the data, his list of tags will probably fill up an entire page. But as you can see here, based upon Tom's response to the initial sign-up survey, we can see the events that he'll be attending in person. We can see his priorities in addressing the transportation workforce and other related items. So at this point, you're probably wondering what specifically happens when we send information to you. Let's take a quick snapshot. Here is some information generated from a U.S. Department of Transportation study conducted by Jobs for the Future and the Learning Center. It addresses a critical issue facing the transportation workforce. As you can all see, 54% of the current transportation workforce are 45 years or older, which is 8% more than the national average. This is a major concern that we face in developing the future transportation workforce. There's going to be a mass exodus of baby boomers, and we need a pipeline of talented professionals to fill these critical roles. This is the kind of information that you will receive. This is what I would describe as a challenge that the transportation workforce faces. We will also send you best practices, resources on perhaps funding opportunities and other things. But in every case, we will attach a micro-survey to the information that we send to you. And it'll look something like this. You'll indicate if the information is useful to you. If it is, this informs our network and our team that you want more of that kind of information. If it's not valuable, you have an opportunity to give us high-level advice on why it's not. If you find the information valuable but you'd like us to dig deeper into a particular aspect, you can indicate as much, and we can then optimize and also direct our future research agenda in that direction. So here you can see a simulation of Tom responding to this boomer exodus issue and his responses. This is what we will be able to do in regard to all of your profiles so that we can get you the right information. In the 21st century information age, we all understand that a data dump is useless because too much data to the wrong people gets us all nowhere. We need to get you the right data so you can solve your specific challenges and problems. So here's a good breakdown of the network diversity that we're looking at. Anjali Logan, Director of Transportation Programs here at CITT, and Tom O'Brien, of course, the Director here, are both intensely dedicated to developing the transportation workforce. However, they have different priorities and they need different information. So taking a quick look at this, you can see that what we're able to do via our engagement setup and with our CRM is identify the exact priorities of our membership and get them the right information. Further, what this enables us to do is develop and identify sub-communities within our larger extended network and then begin to connect stakeholders, steering committee members, and identify common calls to action and connect the right people and leverage our network in the best way possible. At this point, I'd like to take a quick break in the presentation and change gears to some portable media and talk about really one of the coolest features that we've just recently developed. If you could all take your cell phones, and Tom, if you could do this as well, and text join SWTWC to the number posted on the screen, 562-375-4907. And in a minute, you should receive a prompt to text your name and email address. And shortly thereafter, you should be welcomed to the SWTWC network. Let's go ahead and go to the back end of our CRM. And you can see that in real time, we have already added a number of members to our network. This is a useful feature, obviously, in recruitment, but beyond that, it holds the potential of a very useful service for our steering committee members. If, let's say, for example, a month from now, you as a member of our steering committee plan on giving a lecture and you expect a dynamic room full of engaged individuals focused on the same priorities that you're focused on within the transportation workforce, you can speak with a member of our team and we can develop a keyword that you can prompt everybody in that room to dial in just as we have now, and they will be instantaneously added to our network. After your lecture, you can work with a member of our team and we can export all of those new members and their contact information into an Excel document which we can send to you and you can use for further outreach and engagement. So it's what we like to call a win-win. It's helping us build the national network for the transportation workforce while also giving all of our steering committee members a useful service for recruitment for your own purposes and engagement. So beyond the texting function, the SWTWC CRM can also do a number of useful things. One, which we intend to focus on in little case studies in upcoming quarterly meetings, harness the power of social media. There's a number of ways we can engage members of the transportation workforce via Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and we will absolutely do that, and we look forward to your comments after the presentation on ways that you may recommend we do so. We also have the ability to develop targeted research surveys and petitions with calls to action. If you have a targeted issue that you would like to delve deeper into, we will work with you to develop a research survey which you can circulate, and we can also circulate to our extended network and then report those findings back to you, and again, also report out via an Excel document those who engaged in that survey or engaged in that petition. There's a really powerful self-selecting factor in anybody in this day and age who participates in a survey or a petition, and these are exactly the sorts of stakeholders that we want to be working with. And lastly, another valuable service that we can offer to our steering committee members is helping you promote strategic transportation workforce events and other things you want to publicize through our network. So as I said earlier on, we're building an online network, but it's also a person-to-person network. If you have top priorities, important events, and you want help from SWTWC in promoting and engaging, we're here to do that. That's one of our core functions. So this brings us, now that you have gotten a taste of the robust nature of our CRM and our mission, let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we need to address within the workforce. Number one, as mentioned earlier, baby boomers are retiring. It's critical that we find ways to engage the millennial generation to plug in and fill some of these positions. There's going to be an exodus, and it's one of our key challenges is finding ways to fill those vacancies that will be left by the boomers.
There's also the challenge of feeding the pipeline with the next generation of workers, and a lot of this challenge is in career awareness at a much earlier age than many transportation people who end up being transportation professionals first decide that they want to become active in transportation workforce. And that's why the 6 through 12 component of our work is critical. Engaging students, teachers, guidance counselors, and those who interact with parents and teachers to make sure that people understand the benefits of a career pathway in transportation, many of its segments. There's also the challenge of promoting a diverse workforce, and this is to make sure that the experiences and expertise of a wide range of professionals at all levels is brought into the workforce. And also, as I mentioned earlier, one of our specific challenges that we've been asked to address is the question of language acquisition as a barrier to the workforce. That means a couple of things to us. It means not only helping develop English language skills for students who are also trying to develop a growing knowledge of a particular transportation discipline, where that's the case. It also means questions of digital literacy. Preliminary research has shown that even for the generation that grew up with technology, they don't always use it effectively for resume development, job searches, that sort of thing. So that's one of that. So digital literacy being part of the equation, and also opportunities for students to learn second and third languages to make them more competitive applicants for a global workforce, right? And we also, given the nature of the demographics within our 8-state region, we've also made a particular concerted effort to reach out to programs that serve tribal populations.
And new technology poses considerable challenges and also great opportunities. Looking into the future, it's no secret that new technology holds considerable promise to innovate our national transportation system, make it more efficient, make it more sustainable, eliminate traffic congestion, a whole host of things. However, if we don't have the workforce trained to design, develop, and maintain this new technology, we face a major challenge. This is, of course, another key focus for SWTWC. A lot of that falls under ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems, but we're looking at other avenues as well. So, how do we develop a pipeline of qualified talent? It begins with thought leaders. with you, our steering committee members. We need to connect thought leaders in industry, education, labor, government. So how will SWTWC connect the resources and expertise of leaders in these previously siloed fields of industry, education, labor, and government? The answer is clear. We need to develop a network that will help us synthesize and disseminate information to the right people and build meaningful partnerships by leveraging the power of our CRM. So here's where we're going. At the top, we have a representation of our data clearinghouse. Middle, we have SWTWC with our CRM connecting to you, our thought leaders on the steering committee. But here's where we want to be. Our clearinghouse connecting to you, our steering committee members who will connect to strategic stakeholder groups. And beyond that, then connecting different strategic stakeholder groups to one another so that on the ground we have a new high level of integrated collaboration, sharing resources, sharing best practices, and elevating the dialogue driven by data from our clearinghouse, which is further enhanced by the two-way communication between you, our steering committee members, who in turn will communicate with our stakeholder groups, who will give feedback to us so that we can continue to advance our research agenda to enrich our data clearinghouse. And that's why we need you.
So we want to hear from you. We have a couple of specific questions we'd like to ask, but before doing so, I'd like to open it up now to any questions that you might have, things you'd like clarification on, or us to further address before we ask some high-level questions about the role of the steering committee. And if you do have a question, please identify yourself so everyone knows who's on the call. Any general comments or questions? And remember, you can also submit them by chat if you are not connected.
Well, this is Jan Vogel, South Bay Workforce Investment Board, and thank you for inviting me on the steering committee. Question is, how long do you plan for the steering committee to be in operation?
Well, the life of the grant is 4 years. We would love to have this group engaged for as long as you are all interested. We want you to find ways that you benefit from the engagement with us and keep you on as long as possible. Down the road, we would like to identify ways in which the center becomes sustainable through the value that the network brings to the workforce development community. And if we decide as a group that we need different actors involved, different people whose expertise we can call upon, then we can certainly change that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Tom, we have a question from Morgan Ross in our chat box asking, will there be a tribal aspect to this program and information?
Yes. Yes. Thanks for the question. As I mentioned, we have made an effort to connect with TTAP programs, the Tribal Technical Assistance programs in key states. We have partnerships with some of the universities in Oklahoma, in particular, who have worked closely with the TTAP programs. If there's something that you think that we need to be doing specifically, that's one of the reasons that we want this steering committee to be involved, is to help us figure out, is there a way to benefit the tribal communities in a way that's not already occurring? Is it through maybe asking the data question in a different way? Is it looking for best practices from other states in our region or throughout the national network that could benefit those programs? And that's the approach that we hope to take, not only with tribal communities, but with other communities of interest that may already exist within our geographic area.
So Tyler, this is Jan Vogel again. So would it be helpful to you for us to identify training sources for new workforce entrants or incumbent transportation workers, identify local training sources that have done, in our estimation, a pretty good job, and provide that kind of information to you?
Yeah, Jen, this is Tom. That's exactly what the compendium of resources that we're supposed to be gathering is. What the thing we want to avoid, though, is generating a lot of lists of items that really haven't been vetted or identified as best practices. So I think one of the things the steering committee can help us do is actually determine the criteria to use in judging a program that has likely value to somebody else outside of a core discipline area or in another area, and on the applicability and transferability of those efforts. I think FHWA is going to benefit much more significantly if we can help vet the tools, the resources that are out there, so that the most useful ones are shared. They want us to be creating strategic partnerships that are more than just sort of one-off partnerships, maybe responding to a grant. That's great if that happens, but if through the network we actually develop longer-term sustained partnerships, that's what they're looking for. We're not in the business, because we don't have the resources, of creating programs. We're in many ways a broker for information, and our approach, and I'm curious to hear what everybody thinks, is through a more robust constituent relationship management approach that we actually bring people together in a way that benefits all of the parties. With that in mind, the first question we wanted to ask is, based on what we've said and on the invitation letter, is the mission and purpose of the center clear? We welcome any frank comments.
Yeah, seems very clear.
That's good. We have 2 yeses in the chat room. All right, that's good.
They're rolling in.
Good. They're rolling in. The second, from a research perspective, and maybe this is where Brian can give a little bit perspective on the approach that we're taking with creating a regional look to the data. Are there specific ways that we can direct the data-driven research efforts to suit your needs? Is there, I guess my question is there a gap in the data that the center could help with?
And this is in some ways your wish list. If there's been some nagging, irritating gap that you've wanted addressed, this is maybe where we can come in and help address that.
Right.
Like to get back to you on that. I'm sure that we do have some specific information that would be useful to us, but I need to talk to my staff about it.
And one of the things that we'll be doing is generating a follow-up survey based on that, one of the micro surveys, to give you a sense of what that experience would be like, and that would be a good question. Kevin Fleming from the National Center for Supply Chain Technology Education at Norco College also just added a comment that just disappeared from my screen.
He said that it's always hard to gather supply versus demand data.
Supply versus demand data. And I don't know if that means from an industry perspective or an educational service provider perspective. I imagine maybe it's both. But any additional, yeah, both. Okay. Yeah, that is certainly one of the challenges we hope to be addressing, particularly in those key focus areas. But Brian, could I ask you maybe to talk for a second about what you think regional profiles might get us that just national data alone won't, or just looking at individual state data?
Sure, sure. Well, we are in the midst of developing a job needs report, basically an occupational profile for the Southwest. As you saw in Tom's introduction, the region that we're covering is very diverse. There are a lot of different needs geographically, urban, rural, a lot of different transportation modes represented. And so in these early stages, what we're trying to do is just understand the industry in this region, its unique attributes as compared to the rest of the country, and really what makes it tick. And so we've spent some time analyzing background documents and writing up that industry profile. It's still in a draft form. But from there, we are trying to pull out the specific occupations that are represented across the region. And some of those are surface transportation, some of those are air, some of those are related to borders, ports, transit, highways, you know, really anything you can think of in terms of transportation across the Southwest. And that has given us a list of 65 or 70 occupations where we can look at some state level and national data to understand what the workforce looks like in the region, you know, and how that is related to that industry profile. I think that the next stage here is to start to develop some criteria for how we screen out the truly priority occupations in the region, and I think that's where we're going to need the help of this committee and other stakeholders in the region to say, you know, what are the critical things that we should be thinking about as we try to dial in and focus on the core occupations of the regions, the jobs that have the greatest maybe skill needs or greatest demand supply gaps will become increasingly important over the next 5-10 years. And so I think what we'll want to do is engage the folks on this call and on the committee over the next month or two to start going through that process. And once we are at that stage, we've done our screening, identified the core occupations, we can start to think about the programs that may be useful to amplify, to develop those jobs, as well as kind of the cross-cutting skill needs in those occupations. And again, that's where we'll be coming back to you to figure out what we've missed, you know, what we need to add, what's out there, because I think a lot of you folks will know what's happening on the ground even better than we will. So we really envision this as a partnership going forward to get this job needs report in the place that it needs to be to lay the foundational description of the workforce in the Southwest. So more to come for sure, and it's perfectly fine that we need to go back and check on things because we do plan to follow up and get more info from you as things unfold here in the next couple of months.
Comment from Todd?
Yeah, Tom, it's Todd McLeody, the director of the Mountain West TTAP program here for the Southwest.
Yes.
So our function at TTAP is primarily to support the tribes in the transportation industry. And Carla, who's on the committee, I don't think she's on this call right today, but she's from the Oklahoma TTAP Center there. We have a lot of input from our stakeholders on workforce development and the future of that. But I see a large gap when we work with partners and states and other committees on workforce development is a lot of times in a majority of the tribal aspect of things, they're farther behind in that development. And so from our input, we're always going to push from the TTAP side of things that development. Literally, we need the workforce development and people for admin, for planning, for GIS, but for everything. I mean, the way it works in a lot of the tribal communities, especially rural ones, they'll pull somebody from that was just handing out recreation equipment, and now they're the new transportation director. And that's how it works with 75% of the tribal communities in transportation. So a lot of the requests that we will get from our stakeholders will be from that type of background.
Well, that's exactly the kind of feedback we need.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tyler's right. That's the kind of thing we need to hear. And one of the things that I've become very aware of is that there are some really useful lessons that we can draw upon from other industry sectors outside of transportation who have addressed this challenge. And to the extent that we can also serve as a conduit to some of those other industry sectors, whether it's energy or healthcare, there are core workforce development issues, intergenerational conflict issues that have been explored in other areas that perhaps we can bring to the table. This might be an area where asking the right question, going outside of our sphere of influence, might provide us with a lot of valuable lessons. That's really back, Todd. Thanks.
Absolutely. On that note, Tom, I would request that if there are folks on the phone who have resources that they think are particularly useful that either describe the workforce or describe a solution or a challenge, to please send them to us. We've cast a pretty wide net, but I'm sure there are things that we haven't seen. And so if you know of a good report or a website, please do send it our way. Maybe, Tyler, that could go to you as the central point and then get it out to the team.
We were just taking notes, Brian. We'll add a question to the micro survey that we send out after the call that asks about that. So, all of the asks, all of the requests are sort of coordinated through that, and we'll gather information.
Great.
And beyond that, if there's existing data that we can draw from, then absolutely let's do it. But Todd, back to your feedback, which was very valuable. I also welcome anecdotal conversations, qualitative discussion that can inform a move toward more quantitative evidence.
Yeah.
So for this, as I said before, if at any point you have a frustration or you see a gap and you're at your wit's end, that's a conversation that I welcome.
Well, we are a distributed network, given the range of from not only a geographical perspective but an interest perspective. But we're going to make an attempt to be on the ground in each of our states in some way as much as possible to meet with you when we can and with some of the stakeholders. We found our involvement in the Colorado DOT peer exchange really valuable because it put us in contact with knowledge management leaders at state DOTs from across the country. So to the extent that we can meet you where you're already going to be engaging with some of your stakeholders, that would be really helpful way for us to learn more about what you do. Because obviously tribal programs is not our core competency, so any opportunity that we can take to learn more about it from you, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. And the biggest thing I was going to have Morgan send out as well would be in September we hold the National Tribal Transportation Conference every year, and so that's where a majority of the transportation stakeholders from the tribes across the country, including Alaska, get together, and we always have a workforce development track because of the importance that it holds. So that may be something we'll send the information out that you may be interested in.
Yeah, and one of the things that we hope would do through the CRM. So when we find that out, we would be able to tag, and if you from that podium use the text feature, we would be able to tag attendees in a way that somebody else who didn't attend might be able to follow up and see who some of the experts would be, or who has an interest in that area that could generate, new partnerships, new opportunities. So.
Yeah, and Carla Cisco, she's one of your committee members. She is well versed and informed on the tribal side of things too. So
excellent.
She'll be able to put all that input in as well. I just know she's not on the call right now. So
yeah, no, we knew that was going to be a challenge for a lot of people, which is why we're taping it to send to people so they can hear the playback and see the PowerPoint. But that's really good and useful information. I think the next question, in particular, data sets you'd like to access from the clearinghouse. I think this question we sort of thought, are you generally using, are you familiar with reports that involve Bureau of Labor Statistics data? Are there other types of data sets, as Brian asked, that you would like to see us look at where possible? That's the purpose of this type of question. It's going to be a challenge, but a good one to undertake to try to see how we integrate all of the various data. That's Mark's challenge. But making it available in a way that is useful to the various constituents that we have. But so this, you don't have to answer this now. This is something that you'll be seeing as a question on the micro survey. If there is anything in particular that you would like us to take a look at or a closer look at, let us know. As Tyler mentioned, one of the things that we want to do, apart from getting information from you, is use quarterly meetings like this to bring experts that you might have wanted to hear from to you. So you can sort of use the infrastructure of the center to sort of do the legwork, maybe to get people on the call to do presentations. Maybe people who are experts in social media, in how to incorporate that in workforce development efforts. So if there's any particular ways you'd like to focus presentations like this, we'd love to hear them. We thought one of the first presentations could involve the Federal Highway Administration talking a little bit about their network of national trade associations to let you know who you're already connected with by virtue of being part of the center. But are there any other areas of workforce development outreach, things that you'd like to hear as part of these meetings? Thinking? All right.
You already touched on about half of this, Tom, already, but another to think about is we'd like to bring guest speakers in, as Tom mentioned, and as part of our mission, we want to break down these previously siloed sectors of the transportation workforce. So if you can recommend a real visionary in industry or somebody who's doing some really interesting things in education, labor, government, please recommend anybody that you think would be a good potential speaker. We have a pretty good roster we're working up on our end, as Tom indicated, but we certainly would like to take your lead on any advice and any good candidates that you could recommend.
Or if not specific candidates, areas of interest, because we are connected to the other regional centers in the national network, and there might be people, programs that we can draw upon from those areas. And similarly, if you're looking for an audience to get the word out about what you're doing outside of the region to a national network, that's something else I think that we're well positioned to do. I mentioned looking outside of transportation. One of the thoughts I've had is bringing the team behind the Center for Energy Workforce Development to share their experience with you. This is a group that's come to our attention of the work as a result of the work that we're doing. And their efforts are industry and membership driven, and they've found a way to clearly articulate the workforce needs of that industry in a way that is, I think, very targeted and very effective. And I think their experience, while different from transportation because it's fewer players first and foremost, that the lessons that they shared with us have been fairly influential in how we've decided to approach our engagement with industry. And that might be something that we would like to bring to your attention and see if it's beneficial if you all feel that it is. So please let us know if any ideas come to mind or any areas of interest. Oops, sorry for the feedback.
I can't tell if somebody's, is that the comment or is that just Jimi Hendrix feedback? I can't tell.
I think it's Jimmy. It might be feedback from someone who's not muted.
Yeah, so to follow up on something that we touched on a little bit earlier, we welcome your input in developing research surveys as well as petitions with calls to action to advance transportation workforce development. So if you have ideas off the cuff now, we're certainly all ears, but do think about targeted research efforts that we can help advance via our surveys, and we can develop that and then have that information reported back to you. That helps make our clearinghouse that much more robust, and it's our intent that we want to help you carry out your various workforce efforts, and the same goes for petitions.
Well, this is Jan Vogel again. You know, just on some of the comments that you've made in the last few minutes, I mean, we deal with various industries, and some of them have taken great advantage of not only the programs that we have here in the South Bay, but because of what we've done, they've taken advantage of other workforce boards programs in other parts of the state and the country, particularly California and Texas, and the oil companies for one, whereas now they're hiring, I wouldn't say exclusively from the workforce boards, but a large plurality of people are being hired that way because of the programs and the training that they're providing, the training to the new entrants into those programs. On healthcare initiatives, for example, we've had a healthcare steering committee, and we learned information by getting the stakeholders together as far as a particular occupation that they can't find enough people qualified, and based on our preliminary discussions, we're already developing or having our local education partners develop a curriculum that'll help a wide range of healthcare partners because of sharing those ideas. And of course, transportation fits right into that. I mean, right down the street from where I am, we have SpaceX, which is developing a pilot Hyperloop transportation program, which they think will revolutionize transportation. So just getting together and being able to share these type of ideas, I'm sure we'll come up with a number of speakers that you would like, and we are encouraged to learn whatever we can from you and the members.
Jen, that's actually a great segue to sort of what's our last question that to me is the most important. Given the fact that our mission is to collect data, perform research, develop a clearinghouse, engage stakeholders, but not duplicate efforts that are already underway, what will success for the Workforce Center look like from your perspective? How will we know if we have succeeded? And if I would love to hear some preliminary comments now. You can think about it later, but given what we've talked about today, that's the key takeaway that I'd like to have after this meeting. What will success look like?
Being able to recruit and train individuals that normally or may not have historically been targeted for those types of occupations, and being able to target those individuals because of the specific or better labor market information that we gather.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Either by voice or by chat? Again, we may ask this in the micro survey, so be prepared if to answer the question if you would. I think it's important. We are in the process of developing not only a communications strategy, but a long-range plan. I saw Kevin Fleming just commented. Let's see what it.
Yes, success means broader networking, understanding of efforts, and shared resources and contacts.
Okay, so broader network, shared resources and contacts, which is what we're, I think, designed to do and positioned to do. So that's good. I'm glad that resonates.
And you know, for what it's worth, those first two off-the-cuff comments really are in line with our core focus areas and our abiding charter. So that's affirming.
Yeah, no, I think so. Anyone else want to share any thoughts on that question or any other information points you wanted to raise? Okay, I'm hoping that means that we've addressed all the questions. I also hope that as a result of the dialogue here today and the presentation, that you still want to be engaged and remain part of the steering committee. We really do want to rely upon the expertise that's already out there doing good work, and maybe just find new audiences for what you're doing. So, unless there are any other questions or comments, I think we can call it a meeting adjourned.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll be talking.
Yes, thank you to everybody, and look forward to some follow-up communication from us shortly, follow-up surveys, and this is really where the dialogue begins. We kick things off. This is now where we begin our two-way discussion and really engage. So we look forward to your advice and your counsel. Thank you very much.